Hey guys, Dean Sweetman here, along with Frank Barry and my old mate, Justin Dean.
Hey,
how are you,
guys.
man?
Good.
Knuckles from over here.
Knuckles.
nice,
So
nice.
Justin runs a conference called That Church Conference, and it's all about communications in church. And we're gonna have a phenomenal conversation today, wrapped around communication and giving and whatever the heck else we talk about.
Yeah, who
It's gonna
knows
be
where
awesome.
this will go.
Tell us about That Church Conference. You just
Wait. First, we want to
He's
know
always
about
buttoning.
Justin. We want to know
I
about
don't
Justin.
wanna know about him.
Yes, we do.
Excuse me, who is this guy?
The people watching want to know.
You want to know about Justin.
Tell us.
Justin, tell us
Give
about
us your
yourself.
Well,
story.
sure. You want to hear my background first? Okay.
Yes.
So,
timing.
I was communications director, Mars Hill Church, for about 5
Seattle.
years in Seattle. Yeah, that Mars Hill.
Got it.
And
There's a few around.
That was fun. I had a great time there. I oversaw communications, marketing, PR, social media, all that stuff. Before that, I was in tech startups, working in marketing for pretty much my entire career. And when Mars Hill closed down about almost 4 years ago now, that's kind of crazy. It's been been that long. We started That Church Conference, and we teach churches how to best use communications and marketing. Kind of taking everything I learned and experienced at Mars Hill, and we bring in other speakers. And we just had our 4th annual conference
Growing as ever?
last week. It's growing. Next year's going to be twice as big.
Come on.
At a new location. It's going to be pretty amazing.
So what's kind of the reason behind the conference? What are the main goals? What you're trying to do for people who attend?
Well, I think it's just hugely important for churches to pay attention to communications and marketing. And what we saw is that only the big mega churches really were putting any resources towards it. Most of the churches, as you guys know, are small to medium-sized churches.
Right.
And they just didn't have anybody on staff or even volunteers handling communications and marketing. Social media was still pretty new to churches 4 years ago. No one was really using it well.
Right.
So we saw that need of we need to make this important. And conferences at the time weren't even touching on this. And we wanted to create something that was very hands-on and practical. So we brought in teachers that were working in the church, actual practitioners who could just share case studies of what they've been working on, what's working for them. And we've seen over the years, like our first conference, we had everyone raise their hand if they were on staff in any kind of communications or social media role. And a few people raised their hand out of 200 people.
You got like a couple half raises.
Yeah, they were like, well, I don't know, I'm kind of paid, but I'm not really,
They give me donuts.
Yeah, exactly. Now, it's been 4 years. We've done that every year, and a good half of the room or more is now on staff. The other half are still volunteering at their church, but it's becoming more and more important for churches to have these roles.
What does a church communication person do? Like when you were at Mars Hill, you interact with this big community. Like, what does that actually look like at a church? Because I don't think a lot of people have that role or think about that role, or even when you say the word church marketing, I bet you some
has
people
like a negative
recoil.
some people hear that and they go, wait.
We just preach the gospel,
We don't market,
Right. No.
So what does that person do?
Yeah, and I understand that too. Like, a church should focus on preaching the gospel, but we live in an age, like Jesus knew the tools that we would have at our disposal. Go all the way back to the printing press. When the printing press was made and the Bible was able to print, that changed the world. And now we've come 500 years, and there's so many tools at our disposal that the church has kind of just ignored over the years. And to me, like the platform you can have online and through social media is larger than any pulpit out there. You can be the biggest church with 100 campuses, and you can still reach more people through social media,
there's churches
through web.
that might have 500 in attendance, but I've got 5,000 online.
Oh yeah, we're seeing that now. These small churches of 300 to 500 people have huge online influence, and they're able to reach like pretty much every nation out there through Facebook ads and through posts and through church online, live streaming, things like that. And so it's incredible. We're called to spread the gospel, right? That's the purpose of churches when it comes down to it. And so why would we not want to use everything at our disposal to get that out to as many people as possible? And that's where like a communications role comes into play. To me, like if I were starting a church plant, that would be probably like the second or third role that I would hire
Really?
for. Not to knock worship leaders or student pastors, but I would honestly, after a lead pastor and maybe like a second in charge, I would hire a communications person because it's that important.
The return.
To be able to manage how you get that message out and to
right.
be able to have a higher return on that message.
And on that note, I was talking to a buddy the other day about this topic. You could have 500 people in church on a Sunday, but reach 5,000 via social media.
Oh yeah.
And how oftentimes churches, have the volunteer or the summer intern or the
receptionist is handling
doing
social media while she's printing
or
the bulletin.
Exactly. Like churches clicking into the fact that I can reach more people online,
If I do
and hopefully bring them in the doors too over time, right?
Yeah, you want your church to grow as well too.
But I can reach more out there, and why do I not put any resources into it?
Well, and that's that's what we're seeing over the last few years is that people are okay. Sure, we'll devote some resources to this. Can you also handle social media? Can you also handle our website? And so we're making some progress there. Now we're seeing here's how to actually do that well.
Right.
And they're seeing more value in putting not only money but actual bodies at this kind of stuff. And I think that we're seeing a lot of progress with it because it's more than just getting your message out to as many people as possible. Like we want to create disciples as well, and there's a huge opportunity through social media to actually get to know people. Not just on Sunday, but from Sunday to Sunday is what we say, because you can interact with them throughout the week. I mean, I share everything on social media as most people do, but I'm not going to bring that stuff up on a Sunday morning, especially when you're sitting in a pew or a chair and you're watching a message, and you might interact with people in the foyer, but it's very high level. But on social media, we're sharing everything, not only what we eat, but our struggles in Facebook groups and things like that. We're getting even more intimate now.
Right.
And, like my daughter was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes not too long ago. We're able to connect with people through Facebook groups that we never could in person even. And we're getting resources, we're getting support.
Wow.
And a lot of that is through the
Social
church
media.
as well. I mean, the church should be, involved in stuff like that for sure. That's what we're trying to push that now of like, okay, it's not just posting come to church on Sunday. It's how can we actually meet your needs and build community online and connect with people online.
So communications is your thing.
Yeah, sure.
All right. That's what I hear.
And tacos.
I own it. I called it.
And tacos.
Tacos.
And other things.
Tacos.
But,
I just had tacos at the taco truck. So
Yeah. We love tacos. But I would say you're a communications expert. And
if you want to.
Yeah, if I can. But let's bring it biblically for a second.
Sure.
So, no better communicator than Jesus.
Sure, absolutely.
Give us some things that you've kind of biblically would apply to how we can communicate using today's mediums.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at like the book of Proverbs. It's nothing but like communications advice. How to
one-liners like boom, boom.
Yeah, exactly. Just little stingers of here's how best to relate to people. And I think that's what is at the heart of communications is how do we relate to people? How do we act and behave? What characteristics should we have? So there's a ton to learn through there, even the letters and Ephesians and things like that. Lots of lessons that we can learn from there. But I think the best example is to look at how Jesus communicates, and often he would answer a question with a question.
Yep.
He would tell a story. He would speak in parables.
Right.
And he would show examples. He wouldn't just answer and tell people, he knew the answer, obviously. He's God. He could have just, here's the answer, there you go.
But he painted
on
a
with
picture,
you.
right?
But no, he was like, no, here's how I can make it relatable to
Right.
you. Here's how I can make sure you remember it. And here's a lasting story that will apply 2,000 years from now even.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think we can learn a ton from that. So often our communications are simply just trying to get the information out there. We're so worried. We treat it like advertising or like a billboard or, like our friend Aussie Dave says, like a megaphone.
Yep.
Often. And really it needs to be conversational. It needs to be relational. We need to tell stories. Like one thing I tell pastors all the time is whether you're doing like a giving ask or you're even telling your congregation, invite people to church, you can tell them that all day long, but unless you're giving them the tools to do that well by saying, hey, here's how I actually invited someone to church when I was at Starbucks yesterday. Here's what I said. Here's how it went. You tell that story and you give an example of how they can do it. They can relate to it and they can go, well, I can do that.
Right.
You know, and
Right.
it's far more applicable than just saying invite your friends, which is a very scary thing.
Bit generic.
Jesus is a great storyteller.
Yeah.
There's this one time, this like keeps coming up, but it was sort of a training moment. Like Craig Rochelle was sort of showing a bunch of pastors how they did training at their church for like speaking on stage.
Yeah.
And so he'd had a couple people in the audience come up live and go, okay, you're going to give, you know, an offering talk right after a message about adultery. Go. Right? And so, you know, the volunteer, or, you know, pastor, these are all like seasoned pastors mostly,
Right.
would just off the cuff go, and then he'd like live coach right there and get a little feedback from the room, but
amazing.
like live coach. But one of the things, both people, you know, because he was just showing what they do at Life Church.
Right.
And one of the things that he went through with both guys was forcing them to tell a story. Like what they didn't have good elements of the story at the beginning.
Right.
But in 10 minutes, from the first time to the last time, it was just mind-blowingly different because of how they wove.
And that's what you
good
remember.
stories.
You
Remember stories.
remember the story, not what you're actually, you know, the applicable part of it is how you relate to it.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So around the offering, you know, so many pastors, and you know, we've been doing some teaching here this week, and we come up against this constantly. There's two kinds of people in ministry: people who know how to take offerings, and people who don't. And I say it's about 90% don't know how. And there's lots of reasons for that, right? You're a communications guy. The offering that's our wheelhouse. It's a big part of church life.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you've seen and tools and just you've been around church a long time.
Right, sure.
With your communication expertise, how could you help some pastors in that moment?
Well, I mean, you know, going back to what we've been saying, it's all communication is the same. It doesn't really matter what you're communicating. There's some principles here that we're talking about that are applicable. So if you're asking for people to donate, you need to tell the story of why. You need to tell the story of how they can do it. You can't just ask for money anymore. You can't just tell them, hey, the Bible tells us to donate, so you should. Like, that doesn't work anymore. That worked back in your day.
For us baby boomers, man, they just preached the Bible.
The old timers.
Old timers, man, we just did what the Word said. We didn't need any of this fluffy stuff.
Exactly.
But it's not
and that
like
was
that
a great
now.
time to be alive. But that's no longer the case. People these days, they want to know why. They want to know where it's going. And honestly, the church has made some huge mistakes. The church as a whole in mismanaging money and things like that. And so you got to tell that story of how you're using it, why we should be giving, and how that can apply in your life. And then, show them the tools. There's so many tools. Obviously, what you guys offer is the best. It's just it's top notch. You make it so easy to give these days through texting and through the apps and through websites and things like that. It's amazing to me that churches don't jump on those tools. There's still so many churches that don't use those tools.
Tens of thousands.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Maybe
it's
hundreds.
Just crazy to me.
Maybe hundreds of thousands.
Because it's so easy to implement. And these days, I don't know how churches survive without it. And honestly, churches are closing every year. And this is probably got to be a huge part of it. Yeah.
The technology's right in front of you, and
for sure.
it's like right there.
How do you extend? So there's in church, right? So being a great communicator in all areas, but taking up an offering and being good at communicating, the why, the how, showing the impact, telling stories, all that's like super important. But what, from a communications perspective, it extends outside of that moment. That's 5 minutes on a Sunday.
Right. Yeah.
What about the rest of the week, or what? What have you seen churches do well? From a communications perspective, on the just generosity and giving and what's gone well? What have you seen?
And that's a huge opportunity too. We're talking about reaching people beyond just your pulpit and who's coming to your building each Sunday. If you're doing communications well and social media well, you might be reaching a wider audience, and those are people who need to give somewhere. If they're not part of a local church and they're watching online, then there's ways to teach them how to tithe and to donate as well. And so I think the churches that are doing it well are telling those stories even online. They're not scared to make that ask.
Nope.
Often, if you just ask, people will give.
will
I mean,
give,
you
yeah.
know,
Sure.
like we've even at Mars Hill, we said every time there was an ask, you know, you see the uptick, and if we kind of go passive
Right.
and don't ask for a while, you don't see it, and it's
Right.
you know it's a
And
shame that's
If you don't
needed.
ask, someone else is.
Oh, totally. There's so many
Right.
people asking
for money.
for our money, whether
Right.
it's legit
Nonprofits.
nonprofits
Right.
that you know we should be giving to too.
School,
But-
kids' school.
Yeah,
I
kids'
mean,
school.
Kids started
Oh
first
my
grade, and
gosh.
opening
Yeah.
day was like
Yeah.
5 asks.
Oh,
like,
I
I'm
spent
like, this is a public
$25
school.
on cinnamon rolls yesterday because a girl knocked on our door, and it's like, how do you say no to that stuff?
Yeah. I really needed
I
the
pawned it
cinnamon
on my
rolls.
wife. I was like, honey, you want any of these? I gotta take care of the dog.
And then she was like, and I also sell Girl Scout cookies.
Right,
and-
exactly.
Yeah,
She had a
it's a
square
good cover,
reader
yeah.
and stuff. I was like, wow, this is amazing.
It was like you were confessing something just then.
I know it was. Yeah, it's an issue for me. Yeah, but I can't wait for the cinnamon rolls to show up.
Wait, she didn't have them? You have to like
No,
wait?
you have to wait
Oh.
like 2 months. For
Oh,
them.
brutal?
It's
Not
a
on
broken-
demand?
You guys need to disrupt this whole.
That's a broken system,
You know,
man.
industry.
If
If
Yeah.
you're gonna dangle it in front of me and make me wait 2 months,
I know this glossy picture.
Not happening.
It was amazing. So what were we talking about?
giving and communications.
Tacos. Communication outside of Sunday.
So I mean,
Like, have you ever
social
seen-
media is huge.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. There's
Give- do
definitely
you have a-
opportunities.
Give us your
there.
tips on that. Like,
Give it like, yeah, I'm interested. Like, do you have a church that you've seen do this well?
You know, I mean, there's a number of them.
Big or small, it doesn't matter. You can use
yeah.
the biggest in the world if you need to.
I mean, you know, Elevation. I hate to use that example all the time. They're
great.
They're great on social media and online, and it's because they're relational. You look at their pictures; everything's intentional. There's people in it. There's a story to everything that they tell. And you know, churches that are using these tools and putting them online, it's not just come to church and text while you're here. It's hey, you know, you can text from anywhere,
Right.
and reaching those people where they are, like that's the key. Like I know you guys have seen giving actually people give more throughout the week, right,
Sure,
than they
yeah.
do
2/3
on a
about-
single Sunday.
2/3 are on Monday through Saturday. Only 1/3 of giving comes through
That's
Sunday.
because when we're thinking about our finances and paying our bills and things like that,
Yeah.
it's honestly it's
part
when
of
we're
the-
sitting on the couch with our phone. It's
Exactly
when
right.
we're you know in the bathroom on
Yeah.
our phone. It's
Right.
whatever
Yeah.
you know.
or plan
that's
like
what I'm
budget
sending that
planning with
text.
your wife, right? Like
Yeah.
there's these moments that aren't
Yeah.
on Sunday, and you're
Right.
dealing with it.
What
and
you're seeing on
that's-
Sunday is those impulse buys. You're
Yeah,
seeing
yeah.
those visitors give $20
Right,
or $100 here and there, and that's great. You should make those asks as well, and that's when you can do the teaching part of it is to say here's why we give and what the Bible says about it. But you can do that online too. There's no reason why we shouldn't be you know asking consistently and
Right.
regularly
Absolutely.
online. I think that's probably the key when it boils down to it is you got to be consistent with it. You can't have a giving week one year,
Right.
one time a year.
And then
Like
not
no,
talk about it
it's
for
got to be
months.
consistent message. Jesus talked about it. What more than anything, right? Is
2/3
that-
of the parables are
Yeah.
stewardship, possessions, generosity.
Right.
Like he just talked about it all the time.
It's major because he knows how it can control our lives
Right.
if we let it.
Yeah.
And so
Where
being
your
able
treasure
to
is, right?
Yeah,
It's like-
exactly.
And that's the biblical message. The biblical message around generosity and giving is not we need your money,
Right.
or we're not going to be able to pay the bills.
Right.
It's biblically how can we get set free
Yeah.
from the one thing on this planet that pretty much destroys
Can destroy
nations,
us and control us.
like it's
Yeah.
like greed and
Yeah.
is not good. We know that.
Right, right.
And so from the Bible standpoint, it's all about how to get set free from money.
Yeah.
And have it not control you.
Yeah.
And allowing, understanding what it is. It's a means to do something with.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And you buy and sell, and you sow into kingdom things, and you advance the gospel. That's
Yeah.
all it is.
Yeah.
Beyond
Absolutely. Absolutely.
that, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know it's more blessed to give than receive, right?
Every
So,
time.
like figuring that out, right,
Yeah.
and helping people
Yeah.
through great communication and great
Right.
stories, and obviously great biblical teaching, helping people understand that and get that
Yeah.
in their hearts,
Absolutely.
and then experience it because they do it, they
Yeah.
try it, and they see what happens.
See
and-
how freeing it is to
Yeah.
do
Well,
that?
and people have a perception of churches. They have a perception of money, and so like with any communication that you do, it's really just aligning their perception with the reality of what you want. So by telling these stories, by posting things online, you can do your best to say, here's what we truly are about. Here's why we're asking for money. And I'm a big proponent of just, let's be candid. Like, be transparent as much as you can, but honestly, just be candid. Tell them, here's why we're doing this, here's why we're asking, here's why I can't go into more information on this, here's why I can't tell you how much the pastor makes or how much we spend on this. But, just being open and honest with people as much as you can, and doing that through your posts and communications online is a huge opportunity that may not always even be appropriate on Sunday because you're focused on the message that you have.
What about, like, in this vein of sort of open communication and sharing and stories, like we've been talking about end of year giving and how that's a big opportunity for churches. And one of those moments is the sort of like tax return letter, the final, like, here's everything you gave that year.
Yeah, like your statement.
Like your end of year giving statement.
Yeah.
What have you seen churches do well? Because that's a communication moment.
Yeah.
What have you seen churches do well?
Yeah, even like within the printed letter that you get, right?
Yes.
Rather than just some 2-line, hey, thanks.
Oh, so often
opportunity.
it's a spreadsheet looking thing,
Ugly
where it's
as.
literally like a bank statement looking thing, and it's amazing to me because that's something that you're printing. There's a cost involved in that. How hard would it be to just add something else to it? Whether it's on that same letter or an insert or something like that, that's a perfect opportunity to show what that money was used for. Even if it's just photos of things that you've done throughout the year, it's a great way to communicate what your church has accomplished, things that you were involved in. That's going to be huge for people to see that and hold it in their hands. Churches that I've seen do really well provide like a gift with that. Like you can even do it if they've given over a certain threshold and stuff like that, so you can limit the number of gifts and expenses that you have. But that's huge. Like if I receive something in the mail, that's, even if it's just like some church swag or something. It's just something that shows I'm appreciated. What I did matters. What's really great is that, like, say some of the money went to help Ugandan mission or something. Include like a bracelet that was
from the
made
kid.
from that, something relatable that I can wear that's that shows, hey, I'm a part of something bigger even than our small local church. I'm part of something global.
Yeah, like using that moment to show impact, right? And
absolutely.
And help like people understand, like, you gave this much, and you get to turn that in for your taxes, but let me show you what happened this year, right?
And that puts the focus where it should be, and not on you're giving because you're getting a tax return. Honestly, and that's something that maybe in the next 5 to 10 years could even
go away.
It might go away, and
what I always,
we could debate whether or not that's good or bad. But honestly, either way, we're commanded to.
Where I grew up, Australia, no tax deduction.
Really?
For giving.
Wow.
Except for like a building fund, they have kind of. But
it's
your
like
general giving, no deduction. I was always kind of, what would that do to giving in America?
I think it would. I think we'd see a
for
dive for a while,
and
then honestly, God would.
I don't think I'd like to
prevail through the church.
I don't think I'd like to see it happen, but you know what? It'd force pastors to teach.
And
talk about finances from a
sure.
biblical perspective. They would be at it like straight
honestly,
away.
in a lot of ways, it could be great. It
be.
might destroy a lot of churches, honestly, and that would be sad. I think we would see a huge dive, and that might change some things. But I think in the long run, a lot of good could come from it, because we'd be focusing on the right things. Because we do see a lot of giving at the end of the year. That's why we purposely ask for it more at the end of the year.
The last week of the year is...
We watch our, we can see real time.
Right.
And I remember last year, and we were like, hey, maybe you can hit this, or maybe you can hit that. It's like, holy cow, it's going to hit this.
And some of that's because we're getting Christmas bonuses, and some people are giving big one-time gifts. But honestly, a lot of it is just because people are trying to make those thresholds to get that certain tax bracket and stuff like that.
And look, end of the day, there's nothing wrong with that.
No, at the end of the day, it's all going to the church, and that's great. But you do got to question people's hearts and motives there. Are you giving because you're wanting this tax return, or are you faithfully, regularly, and sacrificially giving?
And that comes back. You're always, the foundation is teaching from the Bible. What does the Bible say? And let's spring from there. I know we've got a different generation now, but I think you got to lay that foundation.
It's still that has to be there, right? Or else it's fleeting.
Absolutely.
So you're on the cutting edge of humanity.
Saying a lot of nice things.
Yeah, I know.
cutting edge of humanity.
We want you to come back. You
Yeah,
know?
we want
Not
you to
even
come
just the
back.
cutting edge of like
communication.
churches and communication.
You're on the
I'm on
cutting
the
edge.
cutting edge of humanity.
100%.
That's amazing.
But what are you seeing? What trends? Like you see stuff. We know giving. You know communications. Two great things going together.
Sure.
What are you seeing? Any trends in communications that the church should be looking out for instead of being last to do something? Maybe be first.
Right. Yeah. You know, I think even with social media, we're seeing a lot of these tools are becoming more just candid and personable and just off the cuff. Like you got Instagram stories, you know, Snapchat kind of set the way with like, hey, we just want you to create content on the fly. Quit producing
just
this
get it
stuff.
out.
Just get it out there. People want
But
to
people find
see
ways to
documenting your
produce
life.
it, even
They're
though
always adding
They do.
bits.
They're it's crazy.
And it's amazing. You always see that, and then it kind of levels out, I think.
Right.
And I think that's great. Like I think that's the trend as we're seeing more of this, like documenting your life rather than promoting things.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So
Right.
you know, even Instagram as a whole, most of the photos that people put in their feeds are so produced, or their image quotes and things like that.
Right.
And people give me trouble all the time because I'll post 2 or 3 times a day on Instagram, and most people are just doing one polished, perfect photo a week.
that
and
they
I'm
spent like 4 hours
but it's
creating.
called
Getting there,
Instagram.
right.
It's called it's supposed to be
Insta.
instant. The whole point was that
Interesting.
you could just post a photo quickly
Like
as
that.
it's happening.
Yeah,
You know, the hashtag latergram became possible because people were like, well, I'm actually posting this 4 days later after I've had time to edit it and stuff. But it's like, that's not how you use this.
Right,
So
right.
I think that we're coming back to that with the way the tools
Okay.
that they're building, even IGTV and stuff like that. And I don't suggest using Snapchat just because of the filthy content that's on there, but the way that they've laid the groundwork for, hey, no, we just want
get
you
it out there.
to get it out there. And YouTube is huge. There's huge opportunity for churches on YouTube. Like if you can
talk about
search
that.
for like how to read the Bible, or you know, how to become a Christian, any kind of religious type of question, and the content that comes up is like 17-year-old girls who are, you know, YouTubers, and they're answering these questions, which is great, but the church is nowhere to be found.
Really?
Pastors are nowhere to be found. There's only a few
Wow.
that are really using the platform well, and it's huge. It's the second largest search engine. Most of the things that people search for are like how to, you know, with the phrase how to in it, they're wanting
Absolutely.
And they want a
answers
2-minute video
for
on how to
things.
do anything.
Totally.
How to do something,
Huge opportunity for pastors and churches to put content out there. And a lot of it is just documenting. Trey Van Camp is a good friend. He's a pastor, and he literally just documents his life and puts it on YouTube. You know, he's like a professional YouTuber now, like because that's a thing. And people are loving it because he's just open and honest with his faith. He's living out his faith. It says in Hebrews something or other. I can't think of the exact verse.
Hold
but
on,
it's
let
in
me
there.
Google it
Just-
on YouTube.
Right.
Let me
See,
YouTube it
you
to
should be able to
find-
Google this on YouTube, or YouTube it on YouTube.
Yeah.
But it talks about how pastors and elders and Christians really are called to display our lives in a way that others can look at it and say, this is how I should live.
Yeah.
Pastors are so, you know, you need to have boundaries around that, obviously.
Right.
But they're usually so secretive. I'm not going to use social media myself. You know, that's my private time. I don't want to have to answer so many questions and things like that. But honestly, I think the most that you can do, the better.
Right.
Yeah.
Is to document that. People want to see how should a marriage
Inquisitive.
be? How should my family be? And it's a lot of pressure. I get it. That's a lot of risk.
Yeah, you got to live up to it.
But honestly, if you're called to be an elder, you're called to be a pastor, you're called to that
Be out in front.
higher calling, and you should be able to be out in front. But YouTube, social media, they give us the tools to do that, and hardly anyone's using it.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that churches are starting to get it, I think, you know,
Yeah.
but then again,
It's
talking to a buddy the
slowly
other
moving.
day, it's like interns doing the social, it's, you know, it's a
Yeah.
crazy thing. So it's good to just chat.
Yeah.
And hopefully the crew here, the Tithely fam, enjoys learning
Yeah.
about church communications and
Yeah.
weaving it into the offering. What would you say if people were to take away like one thing about being a great communicator for the church, you know, and even weaving in generosity like today, what would you tell them to do?
I would say don't worry about how do I do this or how do I get started. Don't get overwhelmed with trying to be Elevation or Hillsong or these people who have, you know, teams that are polished.
Right.
Honestly, just take your phone out
and
start documenting, start posting things.
I think that
A
word
pastor
is
should be able to
important,
go.
like documenting.
I think it is.
Like,
Yeah.
like
Honestly,
thinking that way.
I got 4 kids, 2 to 11, and they don't watch TV. They don't know what commercials are. We've always had an Apple TV, so we watch things on demand. But honestly, they're using their phones and their iPads, and they're watching YouTube and Netflix almost every day. Like all the way down to my 2-year-old. You know, he knows how to swipe and turn on. You know, we have YouTube Kids, and everything's locked down. You know, I'm not going to go there with screen time and stuff like that. But they're growing up like this is their TV, this is their content, and they're watching these guys that are documenting their lives playing video games. They're documenting there's
like my kids like to watch people building Lego sets, and then they can go build
or unboxing things. They know about all the products because it's just a video of them unboxing it. Or What's Inside is a channel that my son watches. It's literally a dad and his son, and they cut things open to see what's inside of it. Like they cut open a Tesla. They get donated stuff. They cut open an iPhone. They cut open whatever. And it's almost like we homeschool, so this is almost like science for us sometimes. But this is the content they're producing, and the church needs to be involved in that as well. There's no reason why all of that content can't come from pastors, come from the church. And it's so easy to just start creating. You can get better over time. But honestly,
just get going.
Just get going. Like that's the thing. Like you know, even with you guys with the Tiley TV and stuff. Just start producing the content, and then suddenly we've got cameras and lights and a backdrop. You know,
we almost look professional.
I know, you're wearing like a blazer.
Oh yeah,
that's
nice. How I roll. I'm the adult in the room. The grandfather, actually.
Grandfather.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Hey, thank you so much.
No problem.
Always
Thank you
good
for
to see
having
you.
me, guys. I love you guys.
Love it.
Phenomenal time, Justin Dean, That Church Conference.
Right.
YouTube it, Google it. Whatever you do these days,
Facegram it.
Facegram it.
Yeah.
And he's a good guy. So thanks for joining. We'll see you next time. God bless. See you soon.
See you, Tyler fam. Bye.